Hello, my name is Elizabeth Gardner, and this is my Capstone portfolio required for the Bachelor of Science Technical Communication degree from Arizona State University. I am a mom and a freelance writer. I decided to complete this program in order to expand my horizons and to learn more about what it means to be a highly valued scribe in today's technologically advanced world. When I started the program, my mind was full of questions. What will I accomplish? What will I learn? How will I learn it? How will I change and use it? But from the beginning and throughout the program, I was reminded of the goals. Goals that would ensure I would come out of the program adept at technical communication. Officially, these goals are called program outcomes. In this presentation, I will demonstrate how I have met these goals. The program outcomes are divided into 4 areas: rhetorical knowledge, critical thinking, reading and writing, which I will refer to as the criticals from here on out, processes, and knowledge of conventions. Mastering these outcomes ensures we will be adept at delivering professional, well-researched, well-designed communication products that have clear messages for the appropriate audiences and situations, with thoughts for ethics, legality, and collaborative teamwork. Let's go through each of these outcomes sections and some works that demonstrate I have learned them. The first section is rhetorical knowledge, which basically means to make good choices. It means being able to understand the purpose, situation, and context, and how to write and create accordingly. So after defining the rhetorical situation, the purpose of the communication, and defining and evaluating the audience, the writer needs to respond appropriately to that rhetorical situation. They need to use the appropriate format, structure, voice, tone, and level of formality. These will be chosen according to the genre and how audiences respond to that genre. The writer needs to be able to write in multiple genres. And finally, after giving thought as to how this information may be accessed and retrieved, who will be retrieving it and why, the writer must choose the appropriate technologies, platform, or mode to communicate. This handy chart shows some of my artifacts and how they meet the rhetorical knowledge outcome goals. The artifacts I have chosen are a collection of works from my TWC 301 General Principles of Multimedia Writing class, which is this website update proposal, and a website final report and PowerPoint presentation, and also a resume web page created for my GIT 215 Introduction to Graphics Programming class. Here's a website update proposal I wrote early in my studies. The purpose of the proposal was to explain the need and benefit of updating an outdated website. My primary audience was the website owner and original creator. My secondary and tertiary audiences were any possible funders and staff or volunteers. So I had to write clearly and persuasively in order to communicate my understanding of the situation, current problems, benefits, and solutions. I had to explain costs and justify those costs. As you can see, I adopted the convention and format of a typical business proposal using a professional and knowledgeable voice, tone, and formality. The genre shaped my writing and my expectations of how the readers may respond. I made use of the word processing technology, Microsoft Word, to organize, present, and communicate this to my audience. This is just one example of writing in multiple genres, and in this presentation you will see a variety of genres, such as this very presentation, and the creation of the slides and the writing of the script. Next, here is the final report for the same website that had an accompanying PowerPoint presentation. My purpose was to show what had been done, any problems encountered, and solutions. The audience wanted to see what had been accomplished or changed on this project, and that the time and any funds were justified. I used a report format and structure and included before and after shots of the site, a look at the new dashboard, and information on the new logo and color scheme. I emphasized the goals that were met and also reported on a survey done by website visitors to show satisfaction. As with the proposal, a professional voice, tone, and formality were used. Here's the accompanying PowerPoint presentation I created so the final report could be presented to the website owner and other interested parties. I used word processing technology to create a printed report and PowerPoint to organize, present, and communicate this information to all the audiences who each may have different interests in the site changes. I did actually update this website. I installed WordPress, a content management system. And this was an exercise in understanding the role of technology that is used to access, retrieve, and communicate information. Here's a very basic resume webpage I created for my GIT 215 Intro to Graphics Programming. The purpose of this class was to learn the basics of well-written HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. This taught me how a simple web page represents two things as far as information sharing. First, it helped me to understand the role of technologies and media in accessing, retrieving, and communicating information. This information on the internet could be retrieved and accessed by potential employers. And second, this technology could be used to organize, present, and communicate information. Critical thinking, reading, and writing, or the criticals. The writer must research and may find mounds of information from a variety of sources with varying credibility or applicability. The writer's critical thinking skills act as a filter, and the writer must strive to use the information, writing and reading, to analyze and synthesize it into the writing and discussion. Research must be understood as a series of tasks, accessing, retrieving, evaluating, analyzing, and synthesizing. The writer must understand relationships and context in order to fully understand not only the written information, but the situation and the purpose of that writing. Writers must also integrate previously held beliefs, assumptions, and knowledge with new beliefs to communicate a purpose within a context. Here's another chart with two artifacts that will demonstrate criticals outcomes. First will be a narrative blog from my TWC 421 Principles of Writing with Technology class, and then a project funding proposal written for my TWC 446 class, which was Technical and Scientific Reports. This was a project that I worked on throughout my Principles of Writing with Technology class. There were multiple drafts and peer input and peer review. It was a topic that changed and evolved throughout based on input from my fellow students and from my professor. Initially, my topic was on how doctors could use social media. My professor pointed out that there could be some legal issues to consider, and I had to research. Then I had to change my original argument based on what I learned from various sources. As I researched, I had to understand the context of the source and motives for that information. I had to understand the ethics, legality, reasons, and history of social media use and patient confidentiality. This was especially important in the context of a health-related area. I had a responsibility to be well-informed and to think, read, and write critically. And this was important not only in researching, but when I put all the information together and wrote about future possibilities for social media and healthcare. As I said, at the beginning of this project, it was originally just, I thought, using social media to keep in contact with patients. But as I researched, I learned more about the method of using narrative in healthcare to reach out to patients, and then was able to connect the narrative method with social media and explain how that could be done while still remaining within HIPAA regulations. Next is a project funding proposal I wrote for my technical and scientific reports class. In this class, before I wrote this paper, my group had written a collaborative project proposal and then worked together to actually do the work we proposed. In our case, we had asked for funds to conduct a survey to assess whether children had limited ability to communicate childhood stressors that might affect diet. I then had to use the data obtained from the collaborative report as the basis for this separate report written for a different purpose to a different entity. Both of these papers were research intensive and required a series of tasks to proceed from one project to the next and for my group to work together on researching, thinking, and writing. We had to understand the context and complex relationships present in our research and writing. The collaborative proposal was written according to a real request for proposals from the USDA. This required responsibility with what sources we used and how we interpreted and used that information in our writing. My group members and I had different ideas as to how to proceed, and we each had different beliefs about the causes of childhood obesity and whether children could communicate that or not. This required a lot of collaborative critical thinking, reading, and writing, and a willingness to integrate our findings with our previously held beliefs. Now we come to the third section of outcomes, processes. Processes are smart footsteps in order to produce a polished, well-thought-out work with minimum or no errors. Processes include making multiple drafts and appropriate research strategies for the context and situation. It also includes being flexible for generating, revising, editing, and proofreading. The writer must be open to later inventing and rethinking and understand the collaborative and social aspects of research and writing. We must learn to critique our own and the work of others. We need to understand teamwork and to learn to balance the advantages of relying on others with the responsibility of doing our part. We must also learn to use appropriate technologies to manage information collected or generated for future use. Here are the artifacts I have chosen and how they meet the processes outcomes. Please note that the artifacts I presented in the previous section for the criticals are also great examples of processes. In fact, I have already explained how they meet most of these outcomes. For example, my medical blog required me to use later invention and rethink and revise my work. In addition, we all learned to use Google Docs and its sharing and collaboration features, including live chat and live editing by multiple authors. This helped tremendously with generating, revising, editing, and proofing, and provided insight into a technology to manage information. So now let's move on to these three artifacts and how they help me meet the process outcomes. I will show you my logo ad and business card from TWC 411, Principles of Visual Communication, my data topics and outputs from TWC 445, Computer Documentation, and a collaborative proposal I wrote for TWC 446, Technical and Scientific Reports. Here I present a logo, ad, business card, and portfolio from my Principles of Visual Communications class. In this class, my professor had a real publishing and publications website, and she needed a new logo, ad, and business card. She was going to use one of our logos on her real site. Here you see the progression and multiple drafts of my logo. It changed after input from the professor, peer review, and forum conversations. Here is the first version, and then the final version of the business card. And these elements progressed to the ad and then to the portfolio. There was some research required for this situation, as this was an LDS or Latter-day Saints business that would primarily offer itself to the LDS community as well as the general public. The LDS faith is not a typical Christian faith. For example, using a cross or other symbols would not be acceptable. So I had to look further into the faith and into appropriate symbols, colors, wording, etc. I had to be flexible and open to change and revision based on what I found and from input. I learned how to use Adobe products in order to manage my work and allow me to reuse it as my work progressed to designing the business card, ad, and portfolio. These are works from my computer documentation class. In this class, we wrote on 4 different help topics. We had to write knowing that we would reuse the writing in different outputs. We had to write our topics and their sections as standalone works that could be recycled over and over and over in other forms. The outputs resulted from multiple drafts requiring flexible strategies for generating, revising, editing, and proofreading. I admit I didn't fully understand data or single sourcing and had to rethink and revise my writing after learning more from research and input from others. As I learned more from the critique of my own work, I could offer better advice for others. With these artifacts, I managed information with Word, PDF files, help files, and also with the data or single source method to manage information for future use. This is the collaborative proposal I mentioned in the criticals section as the precursor to the final report in technical and scientific reports. I was in a group of 3, and this research-intensive and detailed paper required multiple drafts, appropriate research using scholarly scientific articles and sites, and collaborative writing and editing. This paper required a lot of rethinking and revising when we had collaborative sessions, and we reviewed each other's contributions. We communicated within our group, with other groups, and with our professor in order to meet our goals for the project. The input received was invaluable and helped to form our work. This project was also a learning experience in doing our own work and delegating responsibilities to others. This was an accelerated class, and working in a group allowed us to produce a substantial paper. Working together required planning, sharing work, and taking responsibility for our own parts. We used Google Docs to manage our research findings, drafts, and for generating, revising, editing, and proofreading. This was a challenging project. Before we started to use Google Docs and its functions to chat, share, and work collaboratively, our group was a disaster, and communication was very poor with heated disagreements based on misunderstandings. We learned the value of communicating live in the moment in order to reach agreements when misunderstandings arose. This was a very valuable learning exercise. And finally, our last section, knowledge of conventions. Conventions are friends. The writer must understand the common formats for genre, standard information tools, standards, laws, policies, practices, genre conventions, work documentations, be able to control surface features such as syntax, grammar, punctuation, and spelling, and also understand law and ethics when it comes to writing. My last handy chart. And here are my artifacts and how they meet the knowledge of conventions outcomes. I am including an ASU brochure from GIT 303 Digital Publishing, a guest proposal from TWC 443 Proposal Writing, and an edited resume and transmittal from TWC 431 Principles of Technical Editing. This is an ASU brochure I designed for my digital publishing class. I used provided plain text and was given resources to find approved images and logos. I had to learn the common format for ASU publications. ASU has very specific guidelines for structure, paragraphing, tone, mechanics, and style, and I had to follow those strictly. I had to use a specific font, use of capitalization, colors, position, etc. There were also standards, laws, policies, and accepted practices I had to know. I had to become well versed on the legal use of the ASU logo and how to refer to the university. Knowledge of these guidelines helped me to produce a brochure that is recognizable as an ASU publication at a glance and helps to promote consistent branding. Here are 3 pages of a proposal I wrote for a real nonprofit organization to the Guest Foundation. Writing proposals requires different approaches and tones for different types of funding. For example, a proposal written to a governmental agency should be different than one written to a private foundation, as far as tone and emotional appeal or lack of. Not knowing that difference could make the writer appear naive and can have an effect on success. So this required not only a knowledge of this genre, but of subgenres. I had to use tools to find this funding opportunity, in this case an online database. I also had to use a database to get information about the nonprofit organization I was writing for. I also had to use tools to find supporting resources. I had to understand the standards, laws, and policies for the use of this type of information. I had to understand the legal and ethical uses or issues in presenting and using information in order to ask for funding. As you can see from the pages provided, I applied conventions of structure, paragraphing, tone, and mechanics typical or at least accepted for a proposal. As I worked with this nonprofit organization, my work was documented along the way via email communications and updates. This is a resume I edited for a friend, and the transmittal for my Principles of Technical Editing class. In addition to needing to know the common formats for this genre, standards, accepted practices, and surface features, etc., I learned how to document my work for sharing using Microsoft Word's markup feature. This is a fine tool for editing and helping in the control of syntax, grammar, punctuation, and spelling, especially when working with others. I also documented my work with a transmittal provided to my client. Back to my original questions. What did I accomplish? When I started this presentation and I created the original in the beginning slide, I didn't think I had learned very much. However, going over my artifacts has shown me that I have learned a lot. What did I learn? I learned a lot, but I think I was most impressed by how helpful and utterly brilliant input from others can be. How did I learn it? I learned through a wide variety of projects through this comprehensive and broad program. I appreciated being able to do projects based on personal interests or as favors to others. It helped me to view the projects not only as the writer, but also to understand what clients need. How did I change and how will I use it? I went from being a casual freelance writer to a professional writer who has a lot to offer in a variety of situations. I'm not sure how I will use it, but I feel I have more options, whether working for someone else or for myself. So, did I meet my goals? I am confident I have met the outcomes through a variety of assignments and projects. I didn't think I had changed, but I did. Thank you for watching my Capstone portfolio. My thanks to the school and faculty for the program, and my best wishes to my fellow students in their technical communication endeavors and lives. The end. Thanks for watching.